This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Jessica. And on this week's episode, Ashley is going to be talking about the Ant Hill cult.
Mhm.
And I am going to be talking about Violet Jessop, which was a story recommended by Ashley.
Me! I saw it and I was like, oh, that's a Jessica story. I also don't know why I said my name in such like sensual voice. I'm like, this is Ashley. I don't know why I did that, but
I mean, I didn't notice, so
okay.
it's fine.
um,
Also,
yeah.
I wanted to give a shout out,
Yeah.
yes, to our first Patreon subscribers,
Yay.
Alexandra and Terry. Thank you so much.
And as soon as I figure out how to get your address that they ask you for when you sign up, I'm gonna be sending you a sticker. I just gotta figure out how to get it. I gotta figure out how to access that.
And you like ticked it off, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
So it's got to be there somewhere. If not, look out for a message from me.
yeah. We have some stuff coming your way.
Yeah. Also, some fun news. Did we want to talk about the?
Sure.
Okay. So the July issue of Women Who Podcast will be featuring yours truly. Jessica and I are in it. We're going to be talking about, they interviewed us, and we're going to be talking about our podcast and all things women podcasting. So if you want to check that out, it's Women Who Podcast. They have an Instagram. You can also subscribe to their magazine. I think they put it out monthly
I think so.
slash
And then
quarterly.
yeah, she gives out newsletters as well, and she's super active on her socials. So
Yeah.
she has a lot of lives as well.
Mm-hmm.
And her podcast is going to be starting back up in August.
Yeah. So we really want to thank Women Who Podcast, and we're very much looking forward to reading that interview, and
Mhm.
hopefully we don't come off too crazy.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed always.
So, yeah, that's one thing coming up for us, and then we'll have our giveaway coming up soon too. So keep an eye out
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, we're gonna do a giveaway. We just have to kind of nail down the parameters and stuff like that, and so we'll make that announcement soon. But yeah, if you want to have a shout out on here and get a sticker and get access to a monthly bonus episode, head over to our Patreon where you can subscribe for a $3. Oh, one, two,
Yes.
three, $3. So we would love the support and love the chance to be able to bring you guys some more content.
Yeah, and the more people that subscribe, the more content you are going to get.
Yes, we've got lots of fun plans for when we get a few more subscribers. And then we'll add different tiers, and we've got some fun plans for that too. So
Yeah.
yeah, so all right. Well, my story takes place in Ontario.
What?
Yeah, so a lot of
No.
these no.
Where?
Um, I did not write down the city because I couldn't pronounce it.
And
So
are
I
you
have to
sure it's
say,
Ontario?
yeah, Ontario, Canada.
Are you sure? Because his name is Roche Therio, which is like a very like a very French name.
And Quebec is not Ontario.
No.
So they do talk back and forth. Some people are from Ontario, some people come from Quebec, and some people are from straight up France. So I think his family was from Quebec. Let me just double check. Now you got me double thinking, but I wrote Ontario. Ant Hill Cold.
Oh, he died in New Brunswick. Well,
Well, don't look him up. Don't ruin it. Don't look it up.
well, I know a little about him.
Well, it wants Quebec. So it is Quebec, not Ontario. So Quebec, which is not in Ontario.
No, it's the province over.
Oh, it's its own province.
Quebec is its own province.
Oh, I thought Quebec was a city.
No,
Oh, okay.
it's a
So this,
province.
well, he was born in. You're gonna laugh at me. So I would like to say that a lot of the story has French words, and I took zero French. So I'm gonna rely on Jessica to laugh at me and then help me.
Okay.
But Saguenay?
Yeah,
Is that it?
it's close. Yeah.
Yes. That's where he was born. Um, but yeah, so they do the the they do relocate from Quebec to Ontario.
Okay.
So that's maybe why I put Ontario. But I also want to preface this. It's bad. So trigger warnings, there's some child abuse. Um, and I'll warn you before I get to the child abuse part. This week is not going to be as bad as next week. Next week is going to be real bad. This could be a two-parter. So just forewarning, he's a real bad man.
Okay.
Also they pronounced his name Rock.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay. So Rock Theou, which is the best I'm going to get with that because I listened to that name 7,000 times and Theou is about as best as I'm going to get. So
Wouldn't it be like Terrio?
they said it was Theou.
Weird.
I don't
Not how it's spelled.
know.
Okay.
So, but yours sounds prettier. So I like yours better. So I'm just going to call him Rock for the rest of the episode. I'm not going to try and keep saying his last name. So anyway, he was born in 1947 in Quebec, not Ontario, Canada. He was said to be a really intelligent child, but he never went past the seventh grade. Apparently, their local school only went up to seventh grade, and then he just decided not to continue on after that. His dad was extremely religious. He was a member of the Union of Electors, or also known as the White Berets. Have you ever heard of that, Jessica?
It sounds familiar.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was like something that was well known in Canada or not, but it's a Catholic fascist offshoot of the Depression era.
Okay.
So it sounds awful. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's what his dad was a member of. They also apparently would go around spreading their literature, like I think door to door, kind of like Mormons do, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. So because of having being forced to attend mass and going door to door with the White Berets, Rock basically ended up hating organized religion, which is weird because he started a cult. Um, but
Okay.
he eventually married and had two kids. And during this time, he was dealing with some pretty severe ulcers and he had to have them removed. And there was some like complications from those surgeries. And this led him to be very interested in human anatomy.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yes, which I wrote here, which we all know is not a good thing and is going to suck for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
So, anybody who is interested in human anatomy, good on you. But when we know that someone's a bad guy and they're interested in human anatomy,
Yeah.
never good. I find human anatomy very fascinating, but I also did not start a cult. So, he also took up woodworking. Fun fact.
Was he good?
I didn't say.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, you know what? My most of my information comes from uh a murderpedia article.
Okay.
So just want to throw that out there real quick. So he joined Le Club Aramis, which is similar to the Shriners, if you've ever heard of the Shriners.
No.
They're a fraternity of men, which from their site says, committed to making an even greater difference in the world throughout brotherhood, family fun, and philanthropy. They're like an offshoot of the Masons, the Freemasons. I don't know.
Okay.
It's not like a fraternity of like in college or university that you see. This is for like
Mm-hmm.
grown men.
It's like a brotherhood.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So he joined that. And during this time, he openly made fun of the Catholic Church and became very interested in sex and sexuality, which we also know is a bad thing for those mean evil people to get
Yeah.
interested in. And he became a heavy drinker.
Oh.
Yeah. So he started cheating on his wife left and right. When his wife found out, she obviously left him and decided to move in. And then he decided to move in with one of his mistresses named Giselle.
Okay, well, first of all, good on his wife.
Right?
Like, you go, girl.
Yes.
Second of all, ick. He's gross.
Yes.
And he's not even attractive. Like,
No,
what
he looks
the?
like a crazy hairy mountain man.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks a little Charles Mason y.
Manson.
Thank you, China. As soon as that came out of my mouth, I was like, Mason, that's not right. Sahale. No. Sorry. Um, so yeah, he looks a little Charles Manson-y, like after Charles went to prison, but before he put that swastika on his forehead. Um, well, being a man worried about appearances, he made up a fake bed in the back of his truck to make it seem like he was staying there and not with the woman that he wasn't married to.
Okay, because you really need to keep appearances, buddy.
Right. Around this time, he found the Seventh Day Adventist Church. Have you ever heard of that, Jess?
Yeah.
Okay. So for those of you that haven't, they don't do anything that is seen as unclean, such as drinking, drugs, caffeine. A lot of them don't eat meat or junk food. They try and stay very clean, and they also do not celebrate any holidays or birthdays.
So this seems kind of like Heaven's Gate a little bit.
Seventh Day
It
Advent.
just sounds somewhat like Heaven's Gate because they weren't supposed to do things that made you appear unclean, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, and maybe that's where he kind of the
he got
leader.
some of his, yeah.
Yeah. And they also celebrate the Sabbath on Saturday instead of Sunday. So, he really got into this church and he was their most devout person. So much so that it started to annoy other members.
Why?
He was really boastful and was probably like, "Oh, I'm so much better than you at this. I'm so much holier than you." Probably like one of those, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he started to become very interested in the Old Testament, especially the whole woman obeying
Mm,
man thing.
yeah. And the God was very strict in the Old Testament.
Yes, yes. And he became really interested in the apocalypse.
Uh,
Yeah,
that's a really weird combination.
yeah. So far we have a guy really interested in human anatomy, sex, the Old Testament, women being submissive to men, and the apocalypse. So we can see where this is going.
Like I'm fast like my favorite book in the Bible is Revelation, but like
You also didn't start a cult.
no, and I'm not all about the apocalypse. Like
Yeah.
I think I would like perish quite quickly.
If you start coming to me, Jessica, and saying that you think the world's gonna end on a certain date, I'll let Kyle know that you need to be committed or something.
Perfect.
So he started going door to door with Seventh Day Adventist literature, and he did so well that because he's very charismatic. And so he did really well, and the pastor allowed him to start running their anti-smoking seminars, which good on them, right? Anti-smoking seminars.
Yeah.
He did really, really well at this too. And from these anti smoking seminars, he started getting his following.
What?
Yeah. So there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 10 people that he got to follow him from these seminars.
Holy guacamole.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was Solange Bolliard, who was 21, Chantal Lebray, who's 19. Notice the ages here, very
I
young.
was, yeah.
Francine Laflamme, who's 18. Nicole Rule, who's 20. This one just has quotes and it says Maurice. So I think that was just like a first name or a nickname, who was
Yeah.
18. Jose Pelletier, who was
Okay.
20. Jacques Fissette, who was in his mid 20s. Claude Oliet, who was 24. And then Jacques Guerrier, who was 24. His wife, Mercy Grainer, who was 23, and their 6-month-old baby. So all of these people join him. And Jacques Guerrier and his wife, it's Mary, so Mary, S-E.
Maurice?
Maurice, okay.
Maybe. I don't know. I've never seen a name like that.
Yeah, I was thinking it was,
Maryse?
yeah, like Mary, S-E.
Huh. I'd say Maurice.
Look at how you do your little I can roll my tongue with the best of them for Spanish,
Same.
but I can't do it. Maurice. Maurice. Oh, there's a Canadian professional wrestler named Maurice. Spells it the same
Oh,
way.
cool.
So Maurice. So Jacques and Maurice are going to become big players later on.
Okay.
So all these people started hanging around with Rock and at Giselle's apartment, and they would often stay there all weekend on her floor, on her couch, wherever there was room. He believed that the apocalypse was coming soon, as they all do. And so he encouraged his new followers to drop out of college because what's the point? God's coming. And the ministers of the church that he was involved in started to get a little bit worried about this group. They're like, this seems a little culty. And they could see the hold that Rock had on this group and was worried that his followers were more devoted to him personally than actually the church. And they were probably right at this point.
Mhm. I have a question though. Did
Mhm.
they ever explain the appeal that this church had on him? Because he grew up hating organized religion. And, he was a smoker, a drinker, a sex fiend. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you go to a church that is opposed to all of that.
I think at that point, I would assume that one, he hated Catholicism maybe more than organized religion itself.
Mm,
Um, and I would think that this is the point right after his wife left him and took his 2 kids. So maybe he was kind of looking for something.
okay.
Um, maybe he thought that they would be easy targets. I don't know. Um,
Just seems odd.
yeah, for sure. I mean, maybe his whole idea was to start a cult.
Maybe.
So in 1977, he and his followers attended a Seventh-day Adventist retreat on Lake Rousseau,
Okay, so
Rousseau, in the woods of Muskoka, Ontario.
what?
Muskoka, Ontario.
Muskoka.
Muskoka, Ontario.
Oh God, that's so freaking close to me.
Is it?
Yeah, it's like
Well, there
an
was a
hour and a
retreat
half
there.
away.
There was a retreat there.
Oh God.
And here he met Gabrielle Lavelle from Quebec and Yolanda Gunbert from France. Gunbert? I don't know. I
Did
made
you
that sound
say
German.
France?
France. And they joined his group too.
It did sound German.
I know.
France?
I speak a little German and um So, and when I say a little, I mean like I can say a couple words here and there. I don't have like I could say like what's that because it sounds like English. It's was ist das. It sounds very English.
Yeah.
I know water. Um
I know no.
9.
Yeah.
My favorite word is Waschbär, and it's raccoon.
Aww.
Like little wash bears, wash bear. I like it.
Vashper. So cute.
Okay, so anyway, this natural scenery really made a huge impression on Rock. And at one point during the retreat, he went hiking by himself and climbed up on this beautiful rock. And he said he had this vision where the sky lit up with white radiance, and the voice of God told him um, that this was a holy place.
It is quite beautiful.
Is it?
There's this is kind of off topic, but we kind of have to drive through Muskoka to go home to visit my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a road and it's called Go Home Lake Road. So every time I drive by it, I'm like, go home, Lake, you're drunk.
Go make your job. Yeah, funny.
Go home, Lake. Sorry. It's a really funny thing.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Cool. I'll bring it to Muskoka when you come visit.
Okay. Yeah, so God told him that this was a holy place, and so it begins. Rock opened up a small store called the Healthy Living Clinic. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Okay, well, it went out of business, so I'm not surprised. It was an alternative medicine venue where you could get organic foods and holistic literature to help you cure any ailment.
Oh. Yeah, I only moved here like 10 years ago, so
Okay, yeah, this was in the 70s, so.
yeah, no. I wasn't even alive then.
So he had people working there for him, and he insisted that they wear a uniform. They had to wear an ankle length pull over tunic, green for the women and beige for men. And Rock wore a dark brown robe of similar, like it was like a pullover tunic, but his was dark brown. The store was used to make money and get more followers. When people would come in, he could kind of charm his way in, and his people who already worked there would try and charm him to start following him as well. And several patrons would volunteer their time or financial help to his clinic. Including Leo Mark Fosher, who sold everything he owned to fund the clinic and move in with his wife and child.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, and the two that I talked about earlier that would become bigger players, Jacques and Maurice. That's how we decided it says, right?
Yep.
Okay. They also did the same thing and sold everything and came in with the group. So Giselle, remember his girlfriend that he moved in with, his mistress?
Yep.
She saw how his followers worshipped him, and specifically the women. And she was really worried that she was going to lose him. So she said, you know what? I'm taking this into my own hands. And she proposed to him, which is a very forward thinking for the late 70s.
Bold move.
Yeah. And he said yes. So
Oh,
it took him a week,
okay.
but he said yes.
Ugh.
And they went to get married in the Seventh Day Adventist Church. The whole group went. They all piled in a van, and they all went. And then when they were done, they all piled in a van and drove the 5 hours back. And while they were driving, apparently he was flirting and laughing with the other women the whole way, and poor Giselle was in the back crying, thinking that,
Oh.
you know, he probably just married her to show the Seventh Day Adventists that he was still one of them, like used her as a pawn, basically.
Yeah.
Things started to escalate from there. In March of 1978, one of Rock's followers, they just listed him as M. Auclair, allowed Rock to visit his wife Geraldine in the hospital where she was being treated for cancer, and her cancer treatments were going well. Like she was doing relatively well.
Yeah.
But when Rock got there, he got into a heated argument with the doctors about her treatment and the amount of drugs they were giving her, which she's going through cancer treatment, so it's a lot of drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And after this, Rock convinced the husband to transfer Geraldine to his healthy living clinic, and where even her own father was not allowed to visit her. And you know what he used to treat the cancer?
I don't
Grape
even.
juice and organic food.
Wow.
And unsurprisingly and sadly, Geraldine passed away in the clinic.
Oh, okay.
Rock told his followers that he had gone into her room and kissed her, and she awakened from death, but that in the end, quote, you know, when God wants people, he takes them. It was Geraldine's time. At this time, Rock was also entrusted with the care of 19-year-old Gabrielle Nadeau, who was battling MS. And she lives for quite a while, but she does end up passing away in his care. So not only was he playing doctor at this time, he was also playing pastor. He was voted out of the Seventh Day Adventist Church. They literally took a
Good.
vote and kicked him out.
Good.
But he didn't care. And in fact, he started to play pastor and marry some of his followers to each other, even though he had no authority to do so.
Wow. Okay.
Two of the people he told to get married were Claude Olliette and Solange Bollard. Solange invited her parents to the wedding, and they did come because their priest told them to go. He said that they still want to show her that she's loved and has somewhere to go, and like this isn't her only people, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, nothing came of it. Solange married Claude, and that was that. But apparently in the marriage, Rock rambled through and on about how a woman's role was to be subservient to the man. So her family didn't really like that.
No.
In the spring of 1978, Rosh's wife Giselle became pregnant, and she told her husband that he needed to break up his commune, aka cult, or she was going to go live with her dad. So he punched her in the mouth and wouldn't let her leave her room for 2 days. Yeah. In June of 1978, Rock Health Clinic was not doing well. It had a lot of debt. The police were constantly watching because family members of these cult members were, contacting the police and were worried about their family. So the police were always watching. And they were no longer getting the supplies that they used to get from the Seventh Day Adventist Church. So Rock decided to load everyone up and move. They moved from city to city for a while, and at one point they ended up in the forest at the Gaspé Peninsula. Gaspé?
Crispy? How do yeah.
Okay. Well, there he led his followers, or he let his followers in on his vision for the future. He believed that after a storm with boulder-sized hail, earthquakes, and lightning, the world would end. And this was going to happen on February 17th, 1979. And
He was wrong. Spoiler
yeah,
alert.
spoiler alert. I don't want to keep you in anticipation, but the world did not end. But don't worry, guys. They were the chosen ones of God, and they needed to make a righteous life in the Appalachian foothills in order to win the apocalypse, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
So they did that. They hiked out to the forest to make a home. They worked for a long time creating a little like mini city with like, their sewer system. They created like a communal cabin where they all lived. And they were tripping all over their tunics. So Rock created a new uniform. And now they had to wear dark blue wraparound shorts. I'm not really sure that is. And if they complained about anything, he would restrict their food.
What?
Yes, which they
What
didn't have a
happened?
lot of in the first place,
What
right?
happened to Giselle at this point?
She's still there.
Oh,
She's still hanging out.
poor girl.
Yeah. But of course, Rock couldn't participate in the building of the cabin because he had stomach pains. And
Okay.
he said he had cancer,
Okay.
apparently. And that's where they get the name Anthill Cult, because he said they were all working like his little ants.
Great.
Yeah.
Did his cancer just suddenly go away once the cabin was built?
Yeah, it's never mentioned again. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So now he has them financially, right? Most of them are dependent on him, isolated. The family structure is centered around him. He told everyone, he said that everyone on the outside, especially their families, were oppressors and they were, quote, doomed to lie dead for all eternity in the unforgivable harm they inflicted upon these poor innocent souls.
Wow.
Yes.
He's laying it on thick.
Mm-hmm. At this point, one female left and one family left. It was just too much for him. And surprisingly, he let them go. He was like, all right, bye. But he did tell everybody that they were evil. From then on, he gave everyone their new names from the Old Testament. And he became Moise or Moses. I think Moise is like,
It's like Moise, right?
yeah, I think it's like the French, possibly. Yeah. Moise. Yeah, Moise. Um, I think it's the French word for Messiah or Moses, I'm sorry. Yeah. So that's what he went by. And he said that he was their pappy and his wife Giselle was their mammy. Uh, and the group took in about $1,400 a month from their welfare checks.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, One day Giselle found out that Rock had slept with one of his followers, which is not surprising. And she was upset and ran off. Rock stopped her by choking her until she agreed to come back.
Oh my gosh.
Rock then decided that all marriage in the compound was void and that he was going to start marrying everybody, like to himself, including
Ew.
the 19-year-old girl that was in his care for MS.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Uh, During this time, Jonestown happened,
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing at Jonestown, and it was,
1977
yep,
or
and
78, sorry. Yeah.
yeah, and it was all over the news. Apparently, Rock was very interested in this case and followed it very closely,
Of course he
of
was.
course. But because of this, his cult's family members became even more worried and started trying to intervene even more. Police had their eyes on him too, but they had zero evidence that he was a danger to anyone. He did decide to willingly go in for a psychological evaluation, and of course he lied his butt off. He wasn't the leader. The commune was a democracy. There was no polygamy. Everything's fine. It's fine, Jessica. It's
Yeah,
fine.
just
It's
fine and
fine. And they're like,
dandy.
okay, because at this point they have nothing, right? They
Yeah.
can't do anything.
And like you said, he was very charming and
Uh-huh.
charismatic. So,
Yes. And you'll see how charming in a little bit. It's insane. So at this point, Rock had pretty much thrown the teachings of the Seventh day Adventists out the window. He began eating meat and junk food, and he even prostituted one of his wives to a grocer for milk, cheese, and meat.
wow.
Yeah. He started drinking again too and would require his followers to listen to his long, drunken sermons. And if they fell asleep, he would hit them with a thick club.
What?
One of his followers, um, Mercy. How did we said that? Mercy?
M Marcy.
Mercy. Um,
Maurice.
Maurice. Thank you, Maurice. Well, this one's different then. I'm sorry. This one's Marcy Granier was pregnant and she ate two more pancakes than she was supposed to.
Uh,
So Rock punched her in the side and broke two of her ribs. Yeah. Another form of punishment he really enjoyed was to make his followers get naked and stand outside in the snow for a few hours. So he's starting to really,
Ramp it up.
yeah. Um, after having her ribs broken, oh no, I'm sorry, that was Mercy. What was it?
Marcy.
Thank you. Why can't I do that name?
I don't know, because there's Maurice and there's Marcy.
Maurice. So sorry, it was Maurice. I missed
Oh
it.
my God.
I know. I missed a letter. It was Maurice. I'm sorry. I missed a letter in my words. Maurice. So after having her ribs broken, Maurice wanted to leave. She was like, fuck this bullshit. And when word of this got to Rock, see, now I'm all messed up. He told her husband, Jacques, to take an axe and cut one of her toes off. And when her husband was like, no, Rock said to him, "What are you, an F word? Don't you have any balls? If you want to be a man, you have to learn how to teach your woman a lesson." Yeah. And apparently Jacques started kind of like crying at this point because he's like getting screamed at and he's like, "You cut your wife's toes off or whatever." And so Rock said that if Jacques didn't do it, he was going to cut all of Jacques' toes off. So Jacques swung the axe and took one of her toes. Yeah. Uh, so at this point, February 17th, 1979 came and went. And as I'm sure we all figured out, the world did not end. Rock said, well, like, okay, it's super hard for mortals to understand God's time. So, like, maybe I was a bit off, but like, our time isn't exactly like God's time. So, like, he could come any day now. And
I'm sorry. It's the stupidest thing I've heard.
I know.
Okay.
And surprisingly, this made his followers dig down even harder because God could come any day now. So, one of the followers' parents wanted to get their daughter out. So, they actually had a court ordered psychiatric test for their daughter. And so, when the police went to get her, Rock wouldn't let them. He's like, no, you can't have her. So a month later, 10 police officers and a helicopter landed at the commune and arrested Rock for obstruction of justice, and he was ordered to undergo another psychological evaluation.
Good.
While he was being evaluated, Rock worked his magic on the doctors and said that he was just helping these kids to, turn from a life of drugs. Like he was just helping them get on their feet.
Yeah, okay, buddy.
And the director of the hospital believed him, started calling him Moses, and was mad that the public assumed he was crazy just because he had, quote, a different lifestyle.
Oh my goodness. Seriously.
Yeah. So he was released from the hospital early. They're like, yeah, he's fine. He was fit to stand trial for obstruction of justice. So I guess that's one good thing out of that. And he was given a 1-year suspended sentence. At this point, the media portrayed him as a gentle mountain man. So it made his followers even more convinced that he was doing like what was right. In November of 1980, a man named Guy Veer decided to join the commune. He had been at that same hospital where Rock was declared mentally sound, and he had heard about Rock. And so he's like, oh, I want to go join his commune. Commune. And he was allowed to join, but he had to stay off in a storage shed. And he got a small wood stove, 24 homebrewed beers, 2 hens, a rooster, and 1 meal a day. His job was to chop wood and store food rations in the winter and continue construction on the cabin. He was also supposed to babysit the community's 3 children that didn't belong to Rock. They were Samuel Gear, age 2, Miriam Gear, age 4, and Simon Oyet, age 2.
Oh.
So he was the son of Solange and Claude during their brief marriage when Rock had been like, you guys are getting married. And then the other two were kids of the one who he broke the rib of and cut the toe off of.
Oh my gosh.
So they
Poor
had to,
Maurice.
yeah. So they had to stay, those kids had to stay in the shed because they were like outsider children because they weren't Rock's children.
But he married the people. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just don't get it.
Okay. So this is where it's going to get really bad. So trigger warning, pretty bad child abuse here. On March 23rd, 1980, Rock threw a party because his two children from his first marriage were going to come live with him. And the next part, there's two versions. The official version, which was given to the court by Rock, Guy, and most of the other members, said that apparently Samuel, the 2-year-old, was crying that night and was keeping Guy awake. He lost his temper, screamed at Samuel, picked him up by the throat, and punched him in the face 5 or 6 times. Yeah.
And Guy is that like new dude?
Yeah.
Oh.
The next morning, they took Samuel to the commune nurse, and I didn't want to say this part because it's really bad, but it's important for later. But they said his head was like flopping around on his neck. And they said apparently his penis had swelled up for some reason. So Rock took a pair of scissors, sterilized them, and lanced Samuel's penis to, quote, permit urine to flow. And the next morning, Samuel died. Yeah. So according to the book Savage Messiah, Giselle, who was Rock's wife, said that actually the next day Samuel's face was bruised, but it wasn't like, I mean, he obviously had been hit, but his head wasn't like flopping around on his neck. Like he was fine other than like a bruised face. And she said that Rock had actually decided that Samuel needed to be circumcised. So he took the alcohol and sterilized the scissors, as well as took like one of those sucky bulbs filled with the ethanol alcohol and put it down Samuel's throat as a type of like anesthesia. And he actually died of alcohol poisoning, which I tend to think is probably closer to the truth because in the first story, his penis was randomly swollen, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Unless something else happened, you know. So after Maurice's child died, she just went back to work. They burned the body so the birds and bears wouldn't get to it, and they just went on with life. 6 months went by without incident until September of 1980. Rock got mad at Guy for some reason and decided that he should stand trial for what happened to Samuel 6 months ago. He appointed Samuel's father as the judge and others in the commune for like various roles, such as like the jury and stuff like that. The trial was an hour long, and the jury found him not guilty by reason of insanity. But Rock didn't like that. So he took Jacques aside, the boy's father, and said that they should castrate Guy.
Wow.
What I'm wondering is what is with Rock and penises? But he called for another vote, and this time he added his son, Rock Jr., who was like 12 at the time, to vote on if this guy should be castrated or not. And all but 3 said, heck yeah, let's castrate this guy. So Guy was obviously like not all about this, but Rock said that it would cure Guy's headaches and his, quote, excessive masturbation that was causing his respiratory difficulties. He said that in the hierarchy of the group, Guy was a slave, and if he was castrated, he would be a eunuch, which is a step up.
Wow.
And Guy was like, okay. So he had Guy write a letter of consent and sign it, and he did. So Guy got up on the kitchen table. Rock got an elastic band, a razor blade, tweezers, and ethanol, and a magnifying glass. They said the operation was painless, but I don't know if I believe that. They removed his testicles, and the guy bled for a week, but he was fine and never complained of a headache again. But probably because he was afraid Rock would take his penis too.
Okay, I was just about to ask that, like, if they just take the balls or if they take the
Mm-hmm.
penis too, because I never like understood the whole eunuch thing.
Yeah, they just took the balls. I think sometimes they take the penis, like back in the day, depending on like where you were at and stuff. But for this one, it was just the balls.
Interesting.
Yeah. But Rock started to fear that maybe um, he had done something that allowed Guy to become a security risk. So he decided to start tormenting Guy. He would beat Guy. He would have followers stab him in the chest to bleed him to death and then call him off. And after this, Guy was like, I'm out of here. Then he escaped to the nearest city and told the townspeople that a baby had died by being kicked by a horse. Police raided the commune. They arrested the parents. They relocated 7 children there to foster homes. They did find Samuel's remains, and the commune members told the story of Guy beating the child, which again is maybe where I think that that's not necessarily true because
Mm-hmm.
they were mad at Guy, right?
Yeah.
They also found Guy's letter of consent to the castration and even the ballots that had been used for the vote. Um, the parents were all and Guy were all charged with criminal negligence causing bodily harm to Samuel. Claude, who burned the body, was charged with obstruction of justice. Jacques and his wife were charged with neglect towards their oldest daughter, now 5. And Claude and Solange were similarly charged for their treatment of Simone, now 3. They were also charged with bodily harm with intent to mutilate Guy.
But
And they
he
all,
signed.
yeah, but he was charged with it. Um, they all pled not guilty. Jacques, Maurice, Claude, Solange, and Guy were released on their own
Recognizance.
recognizance
Yeah.
on the condition that they not return to the cabin. And the parents were denied bail as they were seen a danger to society. At the end of the 9-month trial, all parties were found guilty. Maurice and Solange got 3 years probation. Jacques and Claude received 6 months in prison and 3 years probation for child abandonment. Guy was sentenced but later acquitted for mental incompetence and was returned to the hospital. And Gabriel was sentenced to 9 months in jail and 3 years in prison. Rock was sentenced to 2 years less a day in prison and 3 years probation on each of the 2 charges. The members of the cult got 4 apartments in the city where Rock was being held, and police knocked down their cabin and like they couldn't go back there. And this seems like it should be where the group story ends, but dear listeners, this is only the beginning of the horrors that Rock committed. And we'll learn more about that next week.
Gosh. I honestly thought that you had forgot that you were doing a two-parter.
No, it's just a long story.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was awful.
Yeah. And it's going to be real bad next week, too.
I'm not even gonna thank you because that was just
It's just
truly
awful.
terrible and not at all what I needed today.
Well, your story is much and like a story of like perseverance and like, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I was like, oh, crap, does she die?
Eventually. As we all do.
Yes, but not like tragically.
I don't think
Maybe.
so.
Okay.
It's a really short story, so I'm glad that yours was long.
Okay.
I looked at a bunch of different resources and there wasn't a lot extra on her, so
Yeah, I mean, it was so long ago, and like it's just like a quick
yeah. And it's a
tale.
really cute story. So like
Yay.
so she was called I think she was called the Unsinkable Woman or something. So kind of like the cats that you were talking about.
Wasn't Molly Brown the unsinkable woman?
I don't know. They called her unsinkable too.
Well, I
So,
think, yeah, I think she definitely deserves it.
so she was the Violet Jessop, sorry. She was the oldest child of an Irish couple living in Argentina, and she was born in 1887. It seemed evident that Violet would survive the moment she was born. Only six of her parents' nine children, including Violet, made it past infancy. So,
Oh,
yeah. Although physicians believed she would die from tuberculosis when she was a child, she overcame it.
oh, look at her go.
I know, already thriving and
Yeah.
surviving. Her mother moved to England with her six surviving children when her father passed away in order to take a job as a stewardess on a ship. But when she grew too sick to work, Violet, then 21, was left to support her family.
Oh, poor thing.
I know. She decided to follow in her mother's footsteps and she became a stewardess for the prestigious White Star Line as
Ooh, I know that name.
yeah, which is a well-known shipping line that transported both goods and passengers across the Atlantic. She served passengers various and varied. I don't know what that was supposed to say. Anyways, she she basically just like catered to everybody's needs in first class.
Mhm.
Um, and she made beds. She delivered breakfast trays. She cleaned toilets, arranged flowers, and she did their errands. So she was basically doing everything.
Yeah. I look like just a floating head because it's so dark in here right now.
Yeah, I turned off my blur background because I was like, it keeps covering my boob up. I have a shirt that just says whatever on it and it's eyes rolling.
Cute.
I say whatever all the time. There was, to put it briefly, no aspect of service that was not her or her colleagues' responsibility. So she is just a well-rounded woman. With everything that came her way, it should therefore come as no surprise that she also survived the RMS Titanic sinking.
That's insane. Especially because she was a worker, you know?
Yeah, yeah. She also survived the collisions and sinkings of the Titanic's two sister ships, the RMS Olympic and the HMHS Britannic, which may come as a surprise. Uh, it was cool because like she was woken up when the Titanic had hit and she was told to kind of go up and try and basically just calm passengers down and tell them where to go and what to do. And
Oh.
she got on one of the lifeboats, obviously, and she just had a random baby in her arms. Like somebody had just handed her a baby, or she found the baby and was just caring for it.
Oh, she just found a baby and was like, okay, I got you, little guy.
Yeah, and
Oh.
then when they were rescued, somebody came and just like took the baby out of her arms, didn't even say thank you, just took the baby.
That's mine now.
Yeah. So she was like, it was so confusing. Not even a
I bet.
thank you.
I bet.
Yeah. The White Star Line had a difficult time in the early 1900s, but Violet Jessop, it seems, did not. After 2 years of serving as stewardess with the Royal Mail Line, Jessop accepted a position on the RMS Olympic in 1910. The Olympic, which was the largest civilian liner of the time, was a luxurious vessel. The Olympic left Southampton's dock in the autumn of 1911 and collided with the HMS Hawke, a British cruiser.
Oh
Sorry,
my
I just
gosh.
like no one was hurt, and despite the impact's damage, the ship managed to return to port without sinking. One would think.
She'd stay off ships for a while.
Yeah, one would think. Um, but she went back to work with White Star Line just 7 months later.
Oh my gosh.
This time on what they called their most unsinkable ship, the Titanic. Um,
Which we
she re-
historically know was very sinkable.
yeah, she recalls in her autobiography that she was asked to go up on deck so that she could set a good example for the non-English speakers who couldn't follow directions.
Oh.
She wrote, I was ordered up on deck. Calmly, passengers strolled about. I stood at the bulkhead with the other stewardesses, watching the women cling to their husbands before being put into the boats with their children. Sometime after, a ship's officer ordered us into the boat first to show some women it was safe. As the lifeboats were being loaded, she watched and eventually boarded one. Jessop and her fellow survivors were rescued by the RMS Carpathia after spending one night in a lifeboat.
Oh.
Even though she underwent this incredible tragedy, yeah, like prodigy or prodigy.
You and I are really struggling today with words.
She still continued to work on ships because she crazy. The White Star Line turned some of its ships into hospitals in 1916 while the country was engaged in World War I, and she was working as a stewardess for the British Red Cross on the HMHS Britannic, one of these converted ships. The Britannic sank in the Aegean Sea early on November 21st as a result of an unexplained explosion. Scientists have failed to come to a conclusive understanding of what caused the explosion, despite British authorities' belief that a torpedo or a mine deployed by German soldiers was to blame.
Oh, wow.
In her memoirs, she talked of viewing the site from her lifeboat. She said, the white pride of the ocean's medical world dipped her head a little, then a little lower, and still lower. All the deck machinery fell into the sea like a child's toy. Then
Oh.
she took a fearful plunge, her stern rearing hundreds of feet into the air, until with a final roar, she disappeared into the depths.
Wow. She should have been a writer.
Well, she wrote an autobiography.
Well, yeah, okay.
So she was a writer.
She was a writer. It was very well written.
Yeah. 30 people were unfortunately killed when the Britannic sank in just 57 minutes.
Oh.
And this part is so terrifying. She became dangerously close to dying as well because the lifeboats were being sucked under the propellers
Oh.
as the ship sank because they were still whirling.
Oh my gosh.
During her escape, she received a severe head injury because she didn't know how to swim, but she just knew that she needed to survive.
Wait, she didn't know how to swim.
Yep,
And this is like the fourth boat she's worked on.
yep, yeah. You know, and you would think that she would learn after like almost dying.
Yeah. A couple times.
Yeah.
Her name was Victoria, right?
Violet.
Violet. Violet, Violet,
She said, I leapt into the water but was sucked under the ship's keel, which struck my head.
Violet. Oh my gosh.
I escaped, but years later, when I went to my doctor because of a lot of headaches, he discovered I had once sustained a fracture of the skull.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Girlfriend.
Many thought she would give up her life at sea after surviving one near sinking and two genuine sinkings. She did, however, return to work for the White Star Line and eventually the Red Star Line in 1920 after a brief break.
She better have gotten like Employee of the Year or something.
Before retiring to Great Ashfield in
Suffolk.
Suffolk, okay,
Suffolk.
where she died at the ripe old age of 83 or 84. Violet Jessop would complete 2 around the world voyages during the remaining
Oh.
portion of her maritime career. She would also have a brief marriage at 36 years old, which only lasted about a year
Oh.
or less.
Oh.
And when she had retired at the age of 63, she moved to the country where she raised chickens and sold their eggs.
Oh, I love that for
So that is my super quick story on Violet Jessop,
her. That was
but
way better than mine.
it was
You're gonna have to do another really light story next week. This one's gonna be
okay.
really bad. Something very
Okay.
happy and light.
Okay. I'll try and figure that out. Um, let's see. Happy jokes.
I have a joke.
Oh, okay.
Why was the fish's grades bad?
Why was the fish's grade bad?
Mhm.
He was a goldfish.
They were below sea level.
I was thinking that. Oh, that's dumb. Oh my gosh.
Why?
Oh
Here's another one. Why can't you trust the king of the jungle?
my gosh, why can't you trust the king of the jungle?
Because he's always lying.
What did the horse say after it tripped?
I don't know what.
Help, I've fallen and I can't giddy up.
Here's another. What do sea monsters eat?
Children.
Fish and chips.
Oh. Okay, one more.
Okay.
What did the triangle say to the circle?
You don't have a point.
You're pointless.
I like it. Well, if you want more of us lovely ladies, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Patreon.
Yes, and if you would like to rate and review us, you can do so on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Yes. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry about my story. It'll be worse next week. I don't look forward to bringing you my story, but Jessica looks forward to bringing you her story next week.
Bye.
Bye.